Coucou, it's Kim. Bienvenue from France. It is officially rosé season. Cheers. So if you're listening, rosé season comes around in Aix-en-Provence every, I would say like April until about September. And that's really honestly the only like acceptable time I would say here that people drink rosé, especially French people out in public. So I was kind of wondering, I don't know about you guys, but why is like Aix-en-Provence and Provence in specific so famous for rosé? So I look this up and actually it's because of a few things. So 300 days of sunshine, which as you can see today, one of those beautiful days, they actually have curated in Provence like expertise and experience over thousands of years to make this type of wine. So unlike other regions, they're not just mixing red and white grapes. They're actually doing what they call this like direct to vine, where they are actually separating the skins from the juice right away. So it creates this kind of unique type of rosé. And the other thing I learned that's different is their vines, like unlike, I don't know, for those of you in the United States that know Napa Valley, for example, you'll just see rows and rows of grape leaves and vines. And instead here, they're scattered among olive trees and fields of lavender. And so they're kind of have a different type of soil. And so it's interesting. And also, last thing I learned about this, that not all rosé wine is the same color. So I used to only choose like really, really pale pink. Like it had to be like almost white for me to enjoy it. And now I've learned like this color, if you guys can see, is actually more like a salmon color. And it's from Bandol. And it's actually just a different type of soil and different type of region produces different colors. So this one, because it's so close to the Mediterranean Sea, which is where Bandol is, this one is a pretty salmon color and has, I would say, a bit more of like an aromatic taste to it. So enjoy a glass of rosé today. Hopefully you're getting some sunshine as well. And I will introduce our concept today. So what I wanted to talk about is how French women really get the idea of balance right. So for those of you also struggling, like I have always been about balance, I wanted to share with you what I've learned from both observing French women, now living among them, and I would say finally, after 3 years of living in France, actually befriending a lot of them, which makes me feel really happy because that's not an easy thing to do. So for a while, I would say when I first moved here, I would kind of watch these French women from afar and think like, well, how are they just relaxing at a lunch? And how are they like walking as if like they have no cares in the world? And it's like they're on their own runway with like cool sneakers and oversized blazer. And I'm always like, this is such an interesting culture that feels very different from my own. And I was thinking like, they're not like rushing around, like all stressed out or trying to just like hover over their children. And I was thinking like, how are they doing this? And so I started to think about this concept of balance. And I looked up the definition of balance, and it's feeling steady, content, and in control across different parts of your life and creating a rhythm. Work and health and relationships and rest are all getting enough attention. And this is the key part. It's where one area is not draining or dominating everything else. Wow. I'm going to pause there because that feels heavy and not something I'm very good at. I feel like I used to talk or hear a lot about this idea of work-life balance. And I actually used to hate that overused statement because it just, first of all, was never true. And second, I always felt like I was just making trade-offs. I was always either choosing work or choosing my kids, but I never really felt like I had a very good balance at either one. And especially, I think when you're working pretty intense jobs like I did in fashion and beauty in New York, San Francisco, I had 2 young kids. And honestly, I was just trying to do a lot. And now I look back and I'm like, that was very American. Like I used to scarf down a salad. Like if I could get a salad quickly between meetings and eat at my desk, like that was considered lunch. I used to like wake up at 5 a.m. to go to Barry's boot camp or some like really intense workout class just because it was the only time I had where I had control over my schedule. And then weekends would come around and I'd be like, oh, to be a good mom, I need to be surrounding like myself with what the kids want to do and all their activities. So we'd be juggling from little league to gymnastics to kids' birthday parties. And I just kind of thought this was normal. And I didn't really think there was an alternative because everyone around me was doing that. And if you slowed down, it felt like you were being lazy. And then if you weren't maximizing your time, it felt like I was irresponsible. And wanting space or time for myself, that was just like inconceivable and felt really selfish when there was a lot of other competing priorities. And so I always, like, I would say, sort of questioned this theory of balance. And when we moved here, I kind of just started noticing a lot of differences. And I started to dig into why French women seem to have perfected this concept of balance. And at first I thought it was like just their style or their aesthetic. And then I realized it's like a completely different relationship to life. So I've narrowed it to about 7 or 8 things that I think French women do differently that helps them actually achieve more balance. So let me start with the first one because it's a big one. They actually have a healthy relationship with food. Okay, I would not say I have the healthiest relationship with food. I have been known to like juice cleanse to try to get skinny, but then like binge on a weekend. It just was kind of part of my normal lifestyle to try to maintain just like a certain weight that I felt like was average and, not overdone, but not like never trying to be super, super skinny. But here, like they're not dieting. The French do not consider like a purpose for dieting. It's pretty normal to have a 3-course lunch. So this includes what would be called in French, like an entrée, a plat, and a dessert. And that's basically like small portions, but still 3 courses. And then if you think about it, like the French are known, this was like very puzzling to me. They're known for like their salted butter that's like super rich and indulgent. The foie gras, the like croissant and the pain au chocolat that are just like all, buttery, delicious, gooey, love them. And then I would look around and I'd be like, okay, there's not really any overweight people or any obese people or children that I see. And this was very confusing to me in France compared to the United States. And then I thought, okay, there's a few things that are really, really different. So they might have this 3-course lunch, but then they don't snack. These lunches are really long, like 2 hours. So it kind of allows their body to be triggered like, okay, I'm full. I'm not going to continue eating. And so they'll stop eating before they're full. The portions themselves are much smaller. The food that they're eating is actually very pure and real, like not processed food. And especially they're not snacking. So there's really no place for processed food within the French culture. And also like food for them is a source of enjoyment. It is like at the center of their culture. It's not really meant to be like scarfed down just to like fill a hunger void or give you energy to get through the rest of your day. So there's not these extremes. Like they're not going to overindulge and then deprive. They're just going to eat well and enjoy it every day. And that to me is like a pretty good balance of relationship with food, as well as like just thinking about how they walk everywhere. The French walk a lot. It's just part of their culture. They even have a word for it. It's called a flâneur. It means to walk without a purpose. And I was like, when was the last time that I walked without a purpose? In fact, until I moved here, it was honestly never. But I love the concept. And it, I think, just really shows the mentality, both with the relationship with food, as well as how they think about just like enjoying life. So that's one thing for the adults. For children, because I was also intrigued by this. So my children also at school have, I would say, a 2 to 3 course lunch. And then after school, it's very common for a child to have a goûter, which is their sweet treat. So it could be a crepe, or it's typically a baguette with like chocolate and butter inside of it, which to me sounded so bizarre, but it's actually delicious if you try it. And this I've found, it can or cannot be true, but I have actually used this now to replace dessert after dinner. So my children typically will have a goûter, but not dessert. And I was realizing they're sleeping better. They're not getting that sugar spike and acting crazy before bedtime. So if you're interested in this, try something called a goûter. I think it kind of helps both with having a balance as well as, managing your children before bed. Okay, number 2. So they're also choosing quality over quantity. This sounds so simple, but this is like not just about food. This is about everything. So as it relates to food, they would rather have like one tiny, delicious piece of amazing chocolate than eat like a whole bowl of mediocre ice cream, for example. If you think about fashion, like they are not going to overwhelm their closets with like a million fast fashioned pieces from Zara or H&M to be on trend. Instead, it's about like some beautiful, well-made pieces that they will continue to kind of mix and match and wear in their wardrobe. This one's hard for me because personally, I love Zara and fast fashion. I know it's really bad for the environment. I know it's actually not even good for me, my closet, like my choice, choice overload. So I'm trying to adapt this a little bit more. The other thing that they really enjoy is they love restaurants and the experience of eating at a restaurant. And so they'd rather have a few meaningful, like high quality meals outside of their home than like what we used to do is a lot of like takeout or delivery or heaven forbid, like fast food. So if they're going to spend their money somewhere, it's going to be on a few meaningful, high quality restaurant meals than a bunch of like takeout. They would prefer to cook. And then it even comes down to something like their lingerie. So it is like inconceivable for a French woman not to match their bra and underwear every single day. When I first moved here and I went like lingerie shopping, they only let you really shop in sets. It's a bit like inconceivable that you would like just buy underwear that didn't match with like a coordinating bra, for example. This was something I definitely had to learn because as an American, like I had an overflowing underwear drawer of a million colors and brands, and then a few select bras that would kind of just go with everything. So it sounds small, but it's actually a very big mindset difference. And I think it's sort of this idea that like less is better, like a few high quality lingerie pieces that make you feel really beautiful inside and out is actually really lovely. I think having like some well-made pieces that you like absolutely adore in your closet versus, oh, I picked that up because it kind of looked good and it was cheap, actually just sort of changes your mindset about how you think about quality. So something else to keep in mind. The third one. Okay. This one kind of hit me hard. They let go of perfection. So they're not trying to be good at everything. Like they're not trying to be the best at work or the best mom, the best wife, the best daughter, the best friend, name it. Like they're not trying to be perfect for everyone and everything. They're not people pleasers. Like they're not about to go out of their way to make sure everyone else is happy. They sort of abide by this concept of like just enough. And it's like, it's better to be balanced as a mother, an employee, a wife than striving to be perfect at all of these. And I really love that because I don't think that's something I really think about. And I've thought a lot more about it recently is this idea of like, well, that's good enough. That's just enough. Like it doesn't need to be over the top perfect or that I'm trying to please everyone. And I think that's something I really want to keep in mind. They also don't spend like hours on their hair or makeup. The messy look is actually pretty preferred, and makeup's not meant to be overdone. It's really just kind of accentuating features that are already, prominent and beautiful. And I just want to say that something though, like, don't get me wrong. They really make an effort. Like looking good is very, very important. It's just not meant to be like overdone and taken like hours for you to get ready. And I think this also sort of helps with balance because you're kind of spending less time on that. And then the third thing as part of this of perfection, and this one also I think is hard to sort of master, but if you're anything like me and you are having people over, it's like I'm running around like a crazy person, like cleaning, making sure the food's good. Like, do I have the right wines? Like, am I making something special for the kids that they're going to eat versus the adults? Like, that would be absurd for a French woman. Like, they have what's called like apéro or an apéro dînatoire, which is kind of like a more of a buffet style dinner meant to be sort of just like nibbles and appetizers that you enjoy, like I would say like early to late evening. And they don't even use the word entertaining. That word is not like a common word in French. And it's not meant to be a performance. This is really meant to be like simple food, simple drinks, a conversation and connection are really at the center and the core. And so the host is actually like present, relaxed. She's engaged in the conversation. she's not trying to please everyone. Like, you get what you get and you don't complain. She doesn't care if the kids aren't eating it. Like, there's always bread that they can eat. And she's definitely not putting on a show for her guests. Like, this is not meant to be a production or a big performance. And I think that also helps to achieve balance, because if you think, I don't know, if you're anything like me, and if it were a weekend I was entertaining, like, I would have to prep for it during the week and then make sure it was like perfect. And I'd spend so much energy and time on like that one event that it would really just, like, I would say, steal from my concept of balance. Okay, next. This is also a bit inconceivable, but because I think it's different in the United States and lots of other places, but their life doesn't revolve around their kids. So this one's kind of uncomfortable for me, because if I said that to another mother, like when I lived in California, if I said like, oh, my life doesn't really revolve around my kids, I think there'd be a bit of like judgment and perception that I wasn't a good mother, or that I wasn't enjoying motherhood. And like, that has its own connotations. But I think it's just also that they're not building their entire identity around their children, and not everything is centered around their kids. So like, for example, playgrounds in France are, I'm just going to use the word, kind of pathetic compared to the US. They are like, it's very little, like minimal things to do. There might be like a little merry-go-round. Maybe if you're lucky, you get swings, but it's not that fun for kids. Like, in fact, my kids don't even ask to go to playgrounds anymore. And I was kind of shocked by this. I'm like, well, they have the space. They obviously could build bigger playgrounds. They could make these better. But it's not about the playground. It's about the fact that these aren't a central gathering place for families. Like, the reason they're not is because they're not that enjoyable for parents. And parents are not going to go out of their way in France to just only do something that provides entertainment for their child. They're doing things that also provide like enjoyment for themselves. So for example, like, a French woman would choose on a weekend, have like a long lunch, or take their children to a winery, or to the beach, or to a museum, or a gathering with friends. And they're not concerned if that's fun for the kids. Like, it may not be. And honestly, it doesn't really matter. Like, your kids are not meant to be catered to at every free moment. They learn to be okay with that. And it's okay. Kids learn to be bored, and that's actually a good thing. They learn to adapt. They learn to exist in a world that doesn't revolve entirely around them. And what's also interesting is they aren't given like screens to distract them, or snacks just to like keep them quiet. This is like, hey kids, like, go figure it out. And over time, you know what? They actually do. So I thought that was also just something I really wanted to keep in mind if I kind of go overboard trying to people please my children. And what it allows for, this is kind of cool, I think, is that the mother doesn't disappear here. She's actually allowed to have her own enjoyment, and that gives her more balance as well. Okay, the next one. Work is a component of their lives, but not their sole identity. So work is actually a means to live a beautiful life. They value work. They take pride in it. They're ambitious, but it's not going to be at the expense of their well-being or their lifestyle, which I think is just a very different concept than how I worked in the United States. I would say this is a bit unfair, because the government in France also sets very clear like legal boundaries. So for example, everyone has a 35-hour work week and 5 weeks of paid vacation. I know that sounds absurd. I was shocked. But there is, I would say, the pay scale is not at the level of the United States. So there is like trade-offs being made there. But there's also no evening work culture. So if you were like me, I used to like go home, make dinner, put the kids to bed, and then hop back online to finish whatever I needed to do for the next day. And there's actually a law that passed in 2017 in France that said employees have the right to disconnect from email, phones, anything electric once they've logged off from their workday. And the Ministry of Labor actually wrote, I'm going to read, "These measures are designed to ensure respect for rest periods and balance between work and family and personal life." Wow. I was like, that's actually like ingrained in the government, which is just so interesting. I think that makes it a lot easier to work to live and not the other way around. So what can we learn from this? I think we can just at least learn to set better boundaries and manage our own schedules, because if we don't do that, someone else is definitely going to do it for us, as I'm sure we have all learned time and time again. Okay, next, they actually trust themselves and they don't feel the need to compare themselves to everyone else. So as I mentioned, I would say French women have this kind of quiet confidence about them. And they're not looking to others for what they should value or for how they should dress or what kind of car they should drive. Like, none of that matters. It's how they feel about themselves and their own life. And this comes out in a lot of different ways. So for example, if you're very wealthy, it's meant to be hidden, like not flaunted. So they're not buying like extremely fancy cars. They're not like buying enormous like mansion homes to show off and prove their wealth. They're enjoying definitely the finer things in life, and they do have beautiful things and wonderful experiences, but they don't feel the need to overly flaunt them. And obviously, I'm generalizing. There are plenty of people that do that here, but it is not, I would say, pervasive as it is in many places in the United States. And I think the other thing that also helps with the comparison culture is social media is just not as prevalent or pervasive here. They don't spend a lot of time, I would say, like posting on social media or keeping up with what everyone else is doing. In general, I would say French women are more private people. Like, they prefer smaller, more intimate relationships than being inundated with what everyone else is doing on social. And they actually, I've heard a French woman say this to me, which I thought was amazing. She said, I don't really believe in like self-induced pressure. And I'm like, oh my gosh, self-induced pressure. Like, that is exactly what social media sort of encourages. So I think that's also one, obviously we are all, I would say, social media is a big part of a lot of our lives, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just about, what is that stealing from your balance, and like, how is that making you feel? And I think that's the question I'm kind of asking myself if I find myself sort of like, doom scrolling in the evenings. Okay, next one. They actually believe a lot in slow living and they don't feel guilty about it. And I don't mean slow living like I'm 100 years old and I'm not doing anything. I mean like taking the time to, I would say, like, live an intentional life. Like, it's okay to sit on a bench and read a book. It's okay to, of course, a lot of the French smoke, so walk around with a cigarette and just admire the city. They are going to prioritize like their well-being, and they know that taking that time for like slowing down is actually super important to them. And they're going to prioritize that over being busy or like looking productive. So something I'm also trying to learn, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm really bad at like just completely slowing down, because I always feel like I should be doing something. And then I would say the last thing is their friendships are treated kind of like a fine wine. So they get better with time. So the French are not going to immediately befriend you or even necessarily be nice to you. They're definitely not going to welcome you with a compliment. Like, I think it's pretty normal when you meet someone in the US to like say, hello, oh my gosh, I love your dress. Like, that would be like très bizarre, like very, very strange here. They believe that would be pretty inauthentic and fake to do that to someone and to say that to someone you haven't met. It doesn't mean they're being rude. It just means they value like allowing the time to really get to know someone before opening up. So kind of like a fine wine, like they let the relationship breathe and take time before they're kind of like going all in and indulging with a new friend. And this also leads to balance, I think, because they're really only curating like deep, lasting friendships that truly matter to them. They're saying no to a lot of things. And I think in the US, we tend to say yes to give people a chance or to see if like there's something there, or maybe because we feel bad and we should do that. Like, no, it's like, if you're in and that is a friend and that's someone you're investing time in, like, that's great. But and that becomes as valuable as gold, and it's invested and nourished over time, but it's not like given out easily and not something that's just sort of thrown around to a lot of people. Okay, so what does this all mean? All right, here's what I've learned. And then I want to kind of talk about what I think you could learn from this as well. So balance isn't something you just achieve once and then you keep forever. It is an ongoing something that you have to practice every single day. And not like in a hard way, but just in like the tiny choices you make every day. So like how you eat, whether you're deciding to like eat in front of the TV or your phone or like quickly scarfing something down. Or like, are you enjoying a meal and putting your phone away and taking that extra 10 minutes to like eat in silence and maybe look out the window, making that up. How you spend your time, like what you say yes to and what you say no to is actually super important. I love this idea of like, if you say yes to like an early morning meeting, you don't even realize you could be saying no to like, maybe that was your time to get a nice workout in or a meditation or like journal for 15 minutes in the morning. Like you always forget what you could be doing with your time if you aren't saying yes to everything. And also what you let go of. The French women are far from perfect and they will absolutely admit that, but they're definitely more anchored, I would say, than I've observed in my own American culture. They're more anchored in themselves. They're more anchored in their lives. I would say for me, it feels that they're more anchored in what really matters in life. And I love that. And I think if I were going to leave you with a few closing words about this, I would say it's not like you need to move to France or any other country or any other like city, state, etc. It's just maybe a different lens. And I think it's a willingness, if you're open to it, to just question the way you might be living. And I like to ask myself a couple of things like, where am I rushing when I really don't need to be? Like maybe I could just wake the kids up 5 minutes earlier so we're not all rushing around stressed. The second thing is like, where am I overcomplicating things? If you're like me, I can turn a small thing into a complete overproduction. Something as simple as like making a dinner reservation. I could overly research and find all these options when like anything's going to be great. Like I should just pick one and move on to something else. And then I love this one. Where am I trying to be perfect instead of being present? And I think this one's super important with your kids. I'll give an example. It was Easter morning and I was obsessed with making these Easter pancakes that I'd seen on some recipe. They were shaped like a bunny. They had cute blueberry eyes and like this little bow tie made of strawberries with chocolate chips. Anyways, I thought it was really cute. Banana ears. Anyways. And I was spending so much time on these pancakes that honestly the kids could care less about, that they were probably just going to like eat in 2 seconds. And I wasn't present when they were asking me, Mama, come look at this. And will you help me with this? And oh, I want to color this Easter egg. And I was just so into making these pancakes because I thought they would be like so cute and perfect for Easter, but that was completely in my head. So just a small thing, I think like try to ask yourself, like, am I doing this for me? Like, am I doing this because I'm trying to be perfect at like creating this whatever masterpiece I have in my head instead of really being present? Because I can guarantee we're going to remember the moments that we were present more than I would remember those like Easter bunny pancakes, although they were cute. I can show you a picture. Also, balance is not about doing everything well. It's actually about deciding what deserves your energy. And then let the rest fall away. This is really, really hard to do, but you have to have the courage to like let little things go and let them fall away because it actually allows you to focus your energy on what really matters. And I think that to me is also just part of this whole concept of balance. And so if you can kind of take away a few things like I have from the French women, and I'm sure honestly they would say take a few things that they would love to learn from other cultures too. But I just really like this one because I think the French women, compared to a lot of cultures, really get the idea of balance right. And I think we could all learn from them. So let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear how you're working on balance in your life. And I will talk to you soon. Please don't forget to follow on cuckoo.pod and let me know what you thought. Okay, thank you. Bye.